You received the case file at dawn, assigned to the Cyber Investigation Desk to initiate the trace and monitoring process. The supervisor briefs you on the initial access logs, emphasizing the critical rule to trace every signal from the network feeds. You take control of the terminal, your fingers poised to follow the data trail through the network feeds for the investigation. You scan the first log entries, identifying the timestamp 090000 as the starting point for your trace and monitoring assignment. The access log piles up, each entry a time-stamped signal waiting for your investigation and precise trace documentation. You identify the first anomaly in the log, a signal that deviates from standard access and requires immediate monitoring and response. Every key press adds to the investigation, documenting the trace with precision under the cold glow of the monitor. The system shows all feeds active, with your terminal now logged into the investigation interface for the assigned case ID. The supervisor places the case file on your desk, outlining the procedure to map signals and log all anomalies in the report. The log file updates in real time, each new entry adding data points to the trace summary you must compile accurately. You initiate the trace command, following the protocol to map the signal path through the network based on access logs. An alert triggers on your monitor, indicating a potential security breach that requires immediate investigation and documentation. The server room camera feed shows normal activity, but the trace must verify each access point against the logs. You cross-reference the log entries with the system map, identifying the first hop in the data trail for the investigation. The investigation memo auto-populates with case details, ready for your input on the trace findings and anomaly reports. Pressure builds as more alerts appear, each requiring a trace entry and response logged in the system under time constraints. The supervisor reviews your initial trace, questioning the methodology and ensuring compliance with institutional oversight procedures. The access logs scroll endlessly, each line a potential clue in the cyber investigation that you are assigned to monitor. You adjust the trace parameters based on supervisor feedback, recalibrating the signal path for accuracy in the report. With the briefing complete, you set up the terminal for the intensive trace phase, ready to document every anomaly. You receive final authorization to begin the trace, with the supervisor emphasizing accurate log documentation for the investigation. The system logs the first access point at 9, as you initiate the trace procedure from the access logs. You proceed to the server room to monitor the data trail firsthand, following protocol for network feed observation. Inside the server room, rows of servers with blinking lights indicate active data flow for the trace you must document. You access the monitoring terminal to begin the trace from the server room, documenting each alert as it appears on the feed. The trace phase begins, focusing on mapping the signal path through network feeds and documenting anomalies in the report. You initiate the trace command, mapping the first hop in the data trail from access logs to the network endpoint. Real-time network feed displays data packet movement, and red alerts pop up, requiring trace entries in the investigation report. An alert triggers with high severity, and you document the response in the investigation memo under supervisor oversight. The alert record updates with your input, time-stamped and linked to the case ID for the trace summary documentation. Pressure mounts as more anomalies appear, each requiring a trace entry and verification against the system logs for accuracy. You discuss a potential anomaly with a colleague, cross-referencing logs to ensure accuracy in the trace report under pressure. Physical notes complement the digital logs, aiding in the trace process as you document each step meticulously for the investigation. The supervisor reviews the ongoing trace, providing feedback to maintain compliance with institutional investigation standards and authority. You recalibrate the trace based on oversight, ensuring the signal path is accurately mapped for the final report submission. The server room camera confirms no physical anomalies, but the digital trace must continue to monitor all access points for breaches. You identify and document an anomaly in the data trail, adding it to the investigation memo for further analysis and reporting. The investigation stretches into the night, with persistent alerts increasing the pressure to complete the trace accurately under time constraints. Access logs continuously update, each line a potential clue that must be traced and logged in the system report for monitoring. You compile the initial trace findings, setting the stage for the detailed report that will follow in the investigation process. You now begin the report phase, compiling all trace findings for supervisor assessment and system submission under institutional oversight. You start documenting the trace summary in the investigation memo, recording each data point meticulously for the authority review process. The digital form fills with your entries, time-stamped and linked to the case for accuracy in the reporting system. The supervisor examines your initial report, identifying areas that require adjustment to comply with investigation standards and authority protocols. You explain the trace findings under questioning, preparing to modify the log entries based on oversight and institutional pressure. You make necessary corrections to the report, ensuring each anomaly is properly logged and referenced in the investigation memo. You recalibrate the trace summary based on feedback, updating the report to meet the required accuracy for system submission. The supervisor verifies your adjustments against the physical logs, increasing pressure to ensure every detail aligns with investigation records. The office setting emphasizes the procedural weight as you compile the report under constant monitoring and institutional scrutiny. You flag a complex anomaly in the trace summary, adding detailed notes to the investigation memo for comprehensive reporting. You consult with a colleague to validate the report findings, cross-checking data against network feeds for consistency in the trace. Each log entry is scrutinized, with timestamps and user IDs forming the backbone of the report for the investigation system. You upload a portion of the report, receiving system confirmation as the supervisor acknowledges progress under institutional oversight. Time pressure builds as you work into the evening, with alerts still active and the report nearing completion under tight deadlines. The trace summary is now complete, with all data points documented and ready for the final review before submission. The supervisor provides final feedback, requiring minor adjustments to the report to ensure compliance with authority standards. You make the last corrections to the report, updating the investigation memo to reflect the supervisor's directives accurately. You compile the complete report, both digital and physical, setting the stage for the final filing under investigation protocols. The server room remains stable, but the report must capture all digital traces for the monitoring network's records. You conduct a final review of the report, ensuring every element is in place for submission and facing the consequences of oversight. The supervisor orders you to double-check the log entries for accuracy before submission, emphasizing authority oversight. The investigation memo holds the case details, with the status updated to reflect the final review phase. You verify each log entry against the system records, ensuring consistency for the investigation report. The supervisor provides new directives to include severity levels in the alert record for the final submission. The monitoring room's ambiance underscores the procedural weight as you finalize the report under pressure. You incorporate the trace summary adjustments into the report, following the authority's strict guidelines. You consult with a colleague to validate the report's accuracy under the supervisor's watchful eye. Each keystroke finalizes the report, documenting the investigation for the system's permanent records. The supervisor signals that the report is acceptable, but you must complete the submission process alone. You save the final report to the system, triggering an automatic alert for the monitoring network. The server room feed remains stable, but the report now encapsulates all digital traces for authority review. You create a physical copy of the report, adhering to institutional protocols for archival and backup. Time pressure mounts as the report submission is logged, with the investigation nearing its conclusion. The alert record is finalized, with all responses documented for the authority's oversight and future reference. You notify the supervisor of the report completion, ensuring the authority is informed of every step. The supervisor confirms receipt and instructs you to proceed with filing the report under investigation protocols. The office setting reflects the procedural intensity as you transition from reporting to the filing phase. You compile the report materials into a structured folder, ready for the final submission to the authority. You verify the submission checklist, ensuring compliance with all authority directives before filing. You complete the report phase, with the investigation memo archived and the system updated for the next steps. The filing stage begins, where every investigation report is archived under strict institutional oversight and procedural weight. You submit the investigation report to the central authority, documenting all traces for archival and future reference. The system confirms the submission, logging the action, and alerting the supervisor to the completed investigation process. The supervisor receives the report and initiates the final review, ensuring compliance with all authority protocols. You monitor the system for feedback, aware that every step is recorded and subject to institutional scrutiny and pressure. The investigation memo is archived, with all data sealed and accessible only through authorized channels for future audits. The supervisor approves the report and orders you to update the system and conclude the investigation session promptly. You update the system with the case closure, ensuring all logs are synchronized and the investigation is marked complete. Each keystroke finalizes the procedural chain, leaving no room for error under the constant watch of authority and system rules. You confirm the case closure in the monitoring network, documenting the end of the trace and alert cycle for institutional records. The supervisor delivers the physical archived report, symbolizing the tangible weight and consequences of the completed investigation. The server room returned to baseline, but the investigation's impact is permanently logged in the system records for future oversight. You secure the physical report in the filing cabinet, adhering to strict protocols for long-term storage and access control. You log out from the system, ending your session and marking the personal conclusion of the investigation assignment. The office is quiet, with the terminal dark, but the procedural echoes of the investigation linger in the institutional space. Your shift ends, but the responsibility of the traced signals and filed reports remains with you as part of the system. The supervisor secures the office, and you exit, carrying the institutional weight of the completed investigation and its consequences. The monitoring room is silent, with every tool and log now at rest until the next assignment and procedural cycle begins. You pass by other investigators, aware that each desk holds similar stories of traces, reports, and ongoing institutional pressure. You leave the institution, but the investigation memo is archived, and the trace is forever part of the system's procedural chain.